thank you to all of our 3 guests for joining. We did have 15 signups, so I'm hoping that after this recording, the content will really help the audience get a sense of 3 to 5 strategies they can use in their job hunt in a period of time most of us find to be extremely challenging. Adunola is someone I have actually worked with. I can go through her accolades. She is a Forbes contributor. She's been featured in everything from The Muse to Fast Company. And as some of you know, I lead a small marketing firm called Thought Bakery. I worked with Adunola early last year when I thought I would want to jump back into, the 9 to 5 market. And one of the biggest things that stood out to me in working with her was that she focused on shifting my mindset. I had a mindset that, let me just do as much applications as possible because I really wanted to leave the job I had. I felt a sense of desperation. I was like, anything is better than this. And at the same time, I had a huge amount of imposter syndrome. So before even talking about, okay, what do you want what do you want your trajectory to look like? She first started to talk me through, well, how do you value your experience? How do you value your background? And making sure I got to a place where I knew what my worth was and that I was going into a job hunting process, not with the fact that anything is going to be better and I'll settle for something that's hopefully going to give me a little more peace of mind, but rather jumping into a job that I felt, wow, this is definitely where I want to be, at least for the next 3 to 5 years. And that was everything from looking at how to research a company, how to update your LinkedIn, when to know early on in the process of, there may not be a fit based on some of the language that's being used or the programs that are being pitched to you. And that was so helpful. It was so helpful that when I ended up getting pregnant and I thought about things, I was like, wow, I really love what I do on a day-to-day basis, running my own company. And I started to invest more time into that. So even though that was not the initial outcome, her ability to coach my mindset and get me to a place of self-motivation and also resilience really allowed me to become the leader I am today. And that's why I thought she would be a great feature. This I'm just going to gloss over. You guys already know who Thought Bakery is. We've grown in the past 12 months. We're continuing to grow. If you know anyone looking to become a graphic design, marketing intern, we're hiring, and you can find that on our LinkedIn page. I've just spoken a ton about Adunola. I would recommend that you Google her because she has a ton of published content out there. In the event you never work with her in your lifetime, following her blog and following her articles, I still find insights and resources that I find helpful in how I communicate with my clients and how I run my teams. So what's 3 to 5? I strongly recommend, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, this is the best way to get new drops within the 3 to 5 series. Every month, we're going to try our best to launch at least 1 or 2 episodes that feature a speaker that has proven results in their space. We thought that kicking it off with Adunola would be great because we have heard a few of the clients we've spoken to, some of the small businesses, they have not been able to stay open or keep their doors open during COVID. So their CEOs or their founders are going back to work. And we thought that was a great place to start the conversation around job hunting, because it's not just people who are actively job hunting, it's people who may have to shift their career because of the times that we're currently living in. So be sure to sign up for our newsletter. The next episode I'm going to talk about at the end of this. What we're going to talk about today, it's going to be twofold. So it's strategies you can employ as an individual to find your dream job with, even in the era of a pandemic, but also if you're a founder or a CEO and you're looking to build or foster a culture of trust because budgets are cut, resources are tight, you can't exactly invest in promotion cycles or in capital intensive programs. That doesn't mean you can't build an internal communication framework that's really going to allow people to feel like, you know what, the people above me communicate what's going on, and I feel like I'm valued here and I want to stay here. Because employee retention is critical for companies that need to keep running, or are just trying to stay in survival mode. So what's happened 2020? Essentially, everyone who had a job, even in, the Fortune 10, 20, 50, asked themselves the question, is my company going to furlough staff? Are we going to downsize? Is everyone going to be allowed to stay working remote? CEOs are being looked at for, if they weren't looked at as, the North Star before, now more than ever, talent workforces are looking to their CEOs and their executives as to be that beacon, to be the person that helps them understand what is going to happen, not just to my role or my team, but the organization as a whole, especially for industries that have been dramatically affected by COVID-19. 100,000 small businesses are due to close, and that number keeps rising each and every day because there's just not enough demand to keep their doors open. That could be in the facility of managing overhead costs, or just keeping people employed. And this number is old. It was 40 plus the other day. When we did these slides, it was at 30 million. As you will see in this chart, jobs are coming back online, but the losses are still much larger than the scale of jobs that are coming back online. So when we have this conversation, another reason why we thought Adunola would make a great speaker is that a lot of people feel demotivated about job hunting during these times because they're seeing data points like this and saying, what is the point? Why would I bother to spend enormous amount of time updating my resume, updating my LinkedIn, applying to a ton of jobs? And the data is showing me that more and more jobs are coming offline every day. The other thing that we found was pertinent to the conversation is some industries felt it a lot more than others. So for instance, everything in personal care that required a brick presence or a store you would actually go and visit, they felt it really hard because those, going to the hair salon, going to the nail salon, it's impossible not to be within close proximity of your customers. And some organizations or some small businesses in that industry have, they've worked really hard to adapt, but it still hasn't made up for the amount of losses they've felt during the past 2 to 3 months. That being said, McKinsey did a report, granted not necessarily on small businesses, but on a lot of larger firms. And they did find that executives were stepping up to make their workforce feel not just safe, but aware of what was happening internally and making sure they had the tools to enable things like remote work. Some of them are investing in, activities for parents to give their kids while they're doing remote work. So things are not all bad. The outlook is not all negative. And that has led us to believe now is still a good time where you can get the job you want. You can still work in a company that you admire the values because they actually live those values. And most of all, if you are a founder or a CEO or someone who's, you lead at least one other person, you can definitely move forward in 2020 without using capital intensive projects or programs to really build a trust-based culture. And that really comes from open communication and being transparent about what the future looks like. And if it's a question mark, then say that. So I'm going to hand it over to Adunola.
Yes, but everything that you just shared is so true. And I'm so glad that we're able to have this conversation because I think it's really important that we see what the positive side is and how we can take advantage of this opportunity in a good way. So the number one thing that we want to discuss is the employer strategy. So what are some things that employers can do? And I know that based on the three of you who are on this call, you guys are talking about what you can do to get back into the market. But I think this will be important, especially if you are either, again, you have someone who you oversee, or you want to make sure that you're looking for these things when you're looking to get back into the market at a new company. And so one of the things that's important for employers to really be considering is retention. And one of the ways that you want to think about that is can you transparently communicate the changes that are occurring in your company, in your industry, in the world with your employees and establish a high level of trust and respect? Because it's clear that this is a time of uncertainty and no one really knows the answer to any of the things that we're experiencing right now. However, there are ways that you can communicate to your staff and your team and even maybe your direct reports so that they know that they're in a place where they feel like they can at least have some level of stability, because that's what everyone is looking for right now. How can they be in a place where they feel secure, where they feel like they don't have to look for a job out of obligation, but they know that they're going to be able to continue to grow or at least continue to be steady at their company? And so some of the ways that you can do that is just communicating with them what's going on with the world, how the company is being impacted by that. And I even read a study that some employees would love, I think it's about like 67% of employees are interested in knowing daily what's happening with the company and how they're moving forward in the pandemic. And so that is a testament of how important it is to be able to communicate those changes as frequently as possible, rather than kind of keeping your employees in the blind where they feel like they have to take control of their situation for themselves and leave or move out or look for something elsewhere. So being transparent, being vulnerable, as Shay mentioned about being human, like showing the humanity in leadership, being able to show like we are all in this together, we are working through this, and not just from a revenue standpoint, but as a human, like what does it look like for everyone to be working remotely? How is that increasing productivity, or how is it maybe not decreasing productivity, and what can we do to improve that? So really showing the humanity side of that in the transparent communication, as well as the changes that are happening with, diversity and inclusion, with the things that are coming about in the world with the Black Lives Matter, like what being able to show your company and your team and your people, like what stance you're going to take because of everything happening or in light of everything happening, and not just speaking or listening, but really adding policy changes to really demonstrate that you support your team and that you're with them throughout, the entire process of everything going on during this pandemic and the other situations that we're seeing in 2020. And so then the second thing is we want to think about how can you recruit? How can you recruit people, especially for small businesses who still are growing and need an extra hand, but maybe they don't have the salary to really be competitive when it comes to bringing those top candidates in. I mean, for you guys, as people looking to land new positions, I know that I talk to so many different clients and speak to so many different people in different industries. And the main things I hear is that people want to feel like they're making an impact. They want to feel challenged. They want to know that they're valued, and they want to be in a place where they can grow. And so all of those things do not have to be attached to money. And so it's really important for employers to realize that there are so many different ways to entice a person to come into their company in a way that they can feel excited about it, even if the salary isn't as competitive as what someone else would pay them. I've worked with so many different clients who have even taken pay cuts because they knew they were going to a company that was stable, that was going to support them, where they felt like they could really grow, and the money didn't really add up to the overall value. So as an employer, if you're wanting to bring in, or as you're looking for the right company, thinking about, do they have a healthy culture? And as an employer, how can you create a healthy culture so that people feel like when they come, they're not going to be people say, like the last one in, first one out. They want to feel like they're going to be stable, that they're going to be supported, that they're going to have the growth. And how can you make sure that that's communicated with people who are interested in working at your company? And another thing I can drive them in is training and development, because, or in lieu of not being able to pay the salary that might be the most competitive, how can you implement training and development to make people feel like if you come here, you're going to grow, you're going to develop your skills, you're going to be an even better professional than if you didn't start at this company or join this company? Because again, people want to feel like they're growing. They want to feel like they're supported. And training and development is a really practical way, maybe even if it's monthly trainings that are monthly opportunities, or even a stipend for them to take other classes outside of their work day. Whatever it is, how can you be creative in creating training and development that's going to allow them to feel like they're being supported, that they're having the growth that they want? And then the third thing would be diversity and inclusion, and not just, lip service or numbers and stats, but What ways are you being diverse and inclusive outside of even just color, outside of even just, the ethnicity of people? What about diversity of thought, diversity of background, diversity of expertise? In what ways are you allowing diverse opinions and ideas to be infiltrated into your company? And how can you be inclusive of those things? And then show people that you're inclusive of those things so that they want to be a part of an environment like that. Because diversity and inclusion is so important even now for people of color who want to feel like they are no longer a part of places where they don't feel seen or don't feel heard or where they feel othered. And then the other thing that you can think of is clear promotion structures. So we know that right now the pandemic is, a crazy time, and we don't know when exactly this is going to pass. But we know that it will pass, just like all else that happens in our lives. And so how can you communicate that to your new candidates or your new hires, letting them know that this is what can happen if you continue to stay with us, or as you get challenged and you grow and you learn, this is the way up. This is the growth that is possible for you. How can you communicate that to them so they know that they're not going into a dead-end job, but they're going to a place where they feel like they have limitless opportunities? And so moving into employees, which is what I'm sure you guys are interested in, what are the things that you can be doing to really stand out in the job market right now with so many people looking for a new job? One, I want to share with you and let you know that if you are looking for a new job after being an employer or an entrepreneur for some time, that is totally okay. And you still can stand out and land a new job. And companies are still hiring, companies are still interviewing, companies are still looking to bring on amazing talent to do the jobs that they're wanting to do now. There are so many companies that are actually growing and thriving, or are just luckily unscathed in despite of the pandemic. And so I think it's important to recognize that you can make this change, and that it's about how are you going to make this change, not if you can make this change. And so with that in mind, it's important to get really clear on exactly what you want to do next and how you can leverage your skills and experience to do those things. So a lot of times entrepreneurs especially can kind of feel like, well, I was an entrepreneur here. I don't really have any experience for what I want to do next. I just want to get back into the job market. I don't know how I'm going to do that because I've never been in the job market. And a lot of times you forget that the experience that you gain as an entrepreneur is actually really valuable for what you want to do next if you start to see it that way. And so how can you take the skills that you've learned as an entrepreneur or at your previous job and say, this is the value that I want to leverage to show someone that I'm exactly who they need. But it first starts with getting clear on what you want to do, because you cannot be valuable or you cannot really align yourself with something you don't know that you want. And so you first have to know what you want so you can align yourself as the person who is who they want as well. And then for the employee strategy, or the second piece of the employee strategy, is to become an asset. A lot of times people think, how can I get a new job? Or if I get this new job, I won't have to worry about this anymore. If I get this new job, I'm going to make XYZ amount of money. If I get this new job, me. And while the things are reasons why you want a job is important and great, and it's going to probably make your life less stressful, when it comes to impressing a hiring manager and positioning yourself as an asset for the company that you want to be a part of, they do not care why you want the job if you cannot show them that you will be successful in the job. And so as a candidate in the hiring process, your main goal is to position yourself as an asset, as a top candidate, as a person who is both a role fit and a culture fit for that company. So again, if we talk about the earlier parts of what employers should be doing, if you're looking for a company that has a healthy culture, that has training and development, that has the type of diversity and inclusion that you're looking for, that has the type of growth that you want, you should then find it easier, because you have that clarity, to show that you're the asset that they need, because you know that's what you want as well. And so when it comes to positioning yourself as an asset, you need to take a careful look at how you're portraying yourself in your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your networking conversations, your interviews, so that people really see your value. They really understand like what you can contribute if you were to work at that company. What value are you bringing to the table now, so they know immediately that they can trust you to do the job, or if you're networking, to recommend you for the job. And so that's why, personalization matters when you're applying. And what that means is that you have to be able to tailor your experience to the roles that you're going after. A lot of times people talk about themselves a lot. And so, for instance, if you're an entrepreneur, you may say something like, I'm an entrepreneur looking to get back into the workforce. But that doesn't really tell anyone how they can help you if you're networking. And it doesn't tell an employer what you can do for them if you're looking to get the job. And so you really have to be able to personalize what you're saying about yourself to really make it relevant for them to know why they should pay attention to you. And so becoming an asset is key because a lot of people do not do this. A lot of people just go out and start brushing up their resume, hoping for the best, sending it out, sending those mass emails, telling people they're looking for a new job without really thinking about how can they be a top candidate. And so that's also why I say that despite the competition, there can be 100 million people looking for a new job, and that's a lot. But if you learn how to position yourself as an asset, you will always stand out regardless of how many other people are looking for a job, because a lot of people looking for a job are not willing to do this. So that's really important for you to know. And so the final thing that I want to share for both employers and employees is that now is not the time to pause or wait things out. I mean, we have been in the trenches for months now, and it seems like we're not moving out of this for some time. So it's really important for you not to pause, but to pivot. As an employer, you want to position yourself as the leader that your company can trust, the leader that your team can rely on, the leader that your team can look to for advice and trust that if you say this, that they believe you and they're going to go with you because they believe in where you're going. And so as a leader of a company or even a leader of a team, if you're looking to land a management role, you have to recognize that this is the time to pivot and to grow. And as an employee looking to get back into the workforce, or an entrepreneur looking to get back into the workforce, now is the time to pivot, because maybe you were doing something else and your industry was really impacted by the things that are happening right now. What you want to think about is, how can I take the experience that I've gained from that industry and pivot to another industry or pivot to another role where I can still use the experience I have and still feel fulfilled at my job. And so that's totally possible. I've had clients who they were in event planning and they no longer can do event planning as much because the industry has taken a hit, obviously due to coronavirus. And instead, one of my clients realized, like, I also like customer success. I also like operations. And so instead of going into event planning or only focusing on event planning, they also pivoted and started looking into customer success roles and operations roles because they have a passion for that as well, and they have the experience to back it up. And so you want to think about, if I cannot do what I used to do, or I can no longer do what I'm doing, what else can I do to create an opportunity for me to advance in my career rather than just wait for things to just blow over? So those are the main facts or the main tips that I would recommend taking advantage of during this time. And I know that if you really take the time to think about it in this way, that as an employer, you're going to be so much better off because your employees are going to feel so much more at peace with where they work. And as an employee, you're going to have so much better opportunity to stand out and to show up as the top candidate that companies are looking for right now.
I don't know since we didn't have an entrepreneur crowd, and we have two people who both work in their organizations, and they might be looking to change teams, they might be looking to jump into another role, they might be looking to seed new ideas, but they're unsure about how do you navigate. We were talking a lot about diversity of thought. So a lot of organizations talk about D&I in terms of their quota for people of color, for instance. And it's a very superficial number because it doesn't really speak to whether or not you're a diverse organization.
Right.
If you could talk a little bit more about how, when you're within an organization and you're trying to come to that decision of whether or not this is where you want to spend the next 2 or 3 years, or if this is the team that you want to stay in, what are some of the things you should consider?
Right.
Is it things like, like for instance, you might be in a sales role, but you feel like you have an affinity for marketing strategy, and you see within your role, you've done projects where that skill set became larger and larger, and contributed to your success. But at the end of the day, you might find, based on your personal goals, staying in a sales role makes more sense. how does one go through that thought process? And the reason I'm asking this question is I do feel nowadays we're very torn with, having these ambitions where we may want to change teams or we want to go to another company, but we feel very frustrated in knowing if we're competent enough to do that. There's, you can want to do a ton of things. It doesn't mean that that might be the best step for you right now.
Yeah, so I think that asking yourself, do you want to stay here for the next 2 to 3 years, is a heavy question because we just have no idea what those 2 to 3 years are going to look like. Companies go through mergers and acquisitions and things just change, or your boss may leave and you may get a terrible boss and you're like, I got to get out of here. So a lot of things happen. So I don't really think that even saying like, do I want to stay for the next 2 to 3 years is a good question to ask yourself, because you may not be giving yourself the best answer because you don't know like what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. But I think that you should ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And beyond what I feel as far as like the finicky emotions that come and go, am I fulfilled doing the work that I'm doing? Do I feel frustrated with the projects that I get? Do I look over across the room when we were in rooms for those who are working from home and look at other people working on stuff and be like, man, I wish that I had a hand in that? Or when you get projects, are you excited about that? Like, you have to kind of take inventory of what is happening right now. And then from there, how does that make you feel about where you are and where you want to be? Because I think that that's important. And then you touched on a lot of different things, especially when it comes to that internal argument you have with yourself. Because on one end, you may feel like, is it better to stay here because of XYZ? But then a lot of times you really have that fear coming up for you of like, can I really make this change? Like, back to your example of marketing to sales, maybe you're like, well, I've been in sales for 7 years. Can I really move into sales? Can I really move into marketing? Am I equipped for it? Can I do it? Is someone going to hire me? Am I good enough? Oh my gosh, there's so many people looking for a new job right now. What if they don't think I'm qualified enough for that role since I've been in marketing? And you just can talk yourself out of it to the point where you're just like, you know what? I'm going to stay here. And so it's important to recognize, like, where is the I'm going to stay here coming from? Is it coming from a place of fear, of feeling like, man, like, can I really do this? Or is it coming from a place of, this is just a better, maybe for you, like a better financial situation for me and my family right now? So that's a stronger anchor than feeling like I'm scared to take this next week because of what could happen. And so I think that you have to first recognize which of the two is happening for you. And if it's the second one, if it's the fear, then we have to deal with that, because no matter what, without a pandemic or in a pandemic, you would always find more reasons to be scared about if you should take this next step, like, regardless. And so it's important to recognize, like, how can I deal with this fear so that it doesn't be a dictator in my decisions, opposed to recognizing the fear and not doing anything about it.
Got it. And that's great advice. I psych myself out daily. Just with different things. Like, we were kicking off this webinar and I told myself, okay, 15 people signed up. If one person show up, that would be great. And, I thought to myself, but I'm constantly helping clients put on their own webinars, and produce media, and do a ton of different things that are larger than life compared to this. And I don't think we take stock of how easily we can psych ourselves out of a great thing. And it's not just relative to job hunting. It's like I said, a mindset change.
Right.
So when you think about your career, not a lot of people, but many women, for instance, tend to say, I need to hit all of these ticks before I can be a director, or I can be a manager, because that's when I'm qualified. Whereas we see our male counterparts, they may wait till they just get the gist of it. They're like, yeah, I'm ready to go.
Right.
So, and with women having intrinsically imposter syndrome, it really does impact how we make decisions, and when we choose to, or how we identify launching pads. We might see them throughout our career, but we just don't go on them because we figure, okay, we've got a lot more work to do. We got a lot more learning to cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think COVID-19 has put us into a state also of being cautious and comfortable, because we don't know what the future looks like. So I like that you said, now is a time to pivot. And then, whilst it is scary of not knowing what's going to happen from an economic and an individual standpoint, it's still the environment is still allowing us to grow and to find the
Right.
opportunities we want. So just so you guys know, Adunola does free dream job breakthrough sessions, or she's offering that because of this webinar. And I strongly recommend to take advantage of that opportunity just because, like I said, it could be anything from learning how to elevate your presence within your team, knowing whether, trying to find clarity in knowing if you're ready to change jobs. If you are ready to change jobs, how do you go about doing that effectively? How do you not just apply to every job out there, but rather focus on a small pool of jobs based on things you're looking for, whether that's things like compensation or DNI or geographical location, the ability to remote work for the rest of your role or tenure. So that's your email address. I'll send this over when we do a recap of the webinar via email. And it's also always helpful if you put the subject line as the webinar title. The next episode we have coming up might be of interest to both of you. We are partnering with Lumina Studios, and they're going to talk about how do you make post-worthy videos from your iPhone or your Android. Because a lot of businesses now, or individuals, we're unable to be out and about. We don't have the opportunity or the privilege to have a production to be in studio. So how do we focus our products and services in the lens of your personal iPhone? So Adunola, you might find it helpful as well,
Right.
just because we have a phrase in saying UGC is not the GC. It's the only type of content a brand can put out now. So you see a lot of Zoom calls being packaged up into an ad. I would like to open the floor. If Casey and Heidi, do you have any questions? Now is a great time that you can ping them. You can write them in the chat or you can ask them.
Just like with everything going on just in like the world economy and with like the Black Lives Matter movement, is there any kind of website or tool that we can kind of find out more about a company's values? Or maybe it's just like looking at a certain section of their website. Any insight into like how, if we're looking for a new job, how we might want to, do some more research into the potential company?
Right. Yeah. So I talk about this extensively in my coaching program and give like a lot of strategies so that you can start to do that even more frequently. But the crux of it is really just, analyzing the job beyond just the job description, and so because a lot of times, when you're looking for a job, it's like, oh, cool, job description, I'm gonna go apply. And rather than doing that, you really want to think about it holistically and really, for one, like looking at the website and saying, like, okay, what are they talking about on the website? What are they saying? How are they talking about their job? How are they talking about the company? Looking at the careers pages, how do they talk about, why you should work at that company? Looking at the about page, what are they saying about them? What are they talking about? What do they taunt? What do they highlight, emphasize? Really looking at it from an objective lens, because I always say, that you cannot, 100% know if a company is going to be the right fit just from looking and doing your research, but you can definitely 100% nix the company from your research because they're not the right fit. And so, you can do, looking at the website, you can look at the news and see if they're a bigger company, like maybe they've been talked about in the news. Maybe there's something that people are saying about them, whether good or bad. You can look at their social media profiles and see, in the age of digital social media, companies should be having social media presence. So what are they saying? What do they talk about? Do they taunt, maybe how they're supporting their employees, or do they not talk about that? What are they talking about? Are they amplifying Black voices, or are they not? And then another thing you could do is even networking, having conversations with people who work there, getting a candid perspective of what it's like to work at that company, and if people really love working there. And, sometimes people won't be that honest, but you can always tell from someone's body language, or if they stumble on the question, if they pause answering. So the key here is to really think about how can you start to read between the lines and at every step of evaluating the company, and even going into the interview process when you have questions or when you answer questions or the questions they ask you, like really taking a really microscopic look at how they're presenting themselves and what they highlight, so that you can kind of ask yourself, does this align with the type of values that matter to me? Does this align with what I'm looking for beyond just what they say and the fact that you want to get a new job somewhere else?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Do you have a follow-up on that?
I have a question. So
Yeah,
I would
go
love
ahead.
your thoughts on LinkedIn activity as it relates to job searching, either outside or within your company. I always tell myself that I'm going to be more active on LinkedIn, and quite
Right.
frankly, I then find it to be a job in of itself. So then I'm not.
Right.
But so it's kind of two questions: your thoughts on LinkedIn, and two, overall social media presence. I mean, we all know what you should not do on social media.
Right.
But what are some added things that you may want to do on Instagram, on Twitter, whatever your social media thing is, to ensure that you are creating and maintaining a brand that is hireable?
Got it. Okay, so with LinkedIn, first of all, I think a lot of times people put a lot of pressure on this one thing that they think is going to get them a new job, right? Like people think, let me get this resume together, and that's of course going to be it. Or then you have people who are like, let me get my LinkedIn together, that's of course going to get me a job. Where in reality, there's a lot of different elements to getting a new job or increasing your chances of getting a new job, and you shouldn't just focus on one thing. But with that said, with LinkedIn, you definitely want to have a personal brand that attracts the right people to your profile, that gets people, the right companies to want to reach out to you. And so it is important to create a profile that really speaks to what the next company is looking for, so they know that you're the right person for those roles as recruiters are looking to hire new positions. I've even had clients, even now, still get responses, and recruiters reach out to them because they had a really engaging and compelling LinkedIn profile. And Shay can speak to that too, when she was a client like that. When you have a really great brand, like when you put yourself out there in a way that we talked about earlier that aligns with the company, even just having a great profile is enough to really have the right people come to you, because they're searching for you and searching for people like you and finding you in their search. And then when it comes to like your activity, a lot of people think that you have to get LinkedIn Premium and you have to do these XYZ things. And I think that that's a preference and not a key factor in getting a new position. I really haven't had, I've been doing this for years, and I haven't really had a client be like, yeah, LinkedIn Premium got me the job. Like I've had clients who have 5 connections on LinkedIn and have still got a job, because again, there's so many different elements that you can that you can utilize to increase your chances of getting a new position. But in that, when it comes to your presence on LinkedIn, especially internally, if you're thinking about how to grow internally, you can start to position yourself as a thought leader if you want to do that. And so you can, maybe post stuff about like interesting information, share your thoughts, share your feedback, share recommendations about your industry, about what you do, so that people start to so you increase your visibility and people start to see like, oh, like Heidi is the girl or the woman who does XYZ. She's really good at blah, blah, blah. Which then shows other people like, oh man, like maybe we should start thinking about what she says more often, or maybe Heidi would be great for this opportunity because I'm always seeing her post XYZ thing. So you have options as far as like how much you want to use LinkedIn or how little you want to use it. But you definitely can position yourself as a thought leader on LinkedIn by showing up and giving information that's relevant to the role that you're looking for next in your company or outside your company. For social media, I mean, I think that it's really subjective, because it also depends on the type of company that you're working for. If you're working for a creative company that values expression, that values open people, that values your opinion in and outside the office, then it's really less about what are you posting on social media and what value do you bring to the company for the job that you're looking for. And if you're going to like a more rigid and structured and, we do this one way type of company, or if you're looking to be a part of that type of company, then I would say keep your social media stuff private. And obviously there's talk about like how they can find you even if you're not private or whatever, and you want to be respectful and think about what would happen if someone was to see this. But I think that at least for the type of people that I tend to work with, and I think that most people tend to be going in this way, and where you want to be in a place where you can feel like you can be your whole self, and hopefully your whole self isn't, racist or saying things that's crazy and out of line, but you want to be in a place where you feel like you can be your whole self and not have to like hide part of you, even outside of the office because of your job. And so it goes back to finding that place where you feel like you can really bring yourself to work so that even outside of work, you can be yourself, even if that's on social media.
And I want to add to that, we're actually seeing that happening at the top with some of the moves that's been happening, not because of the BLM movement. I believe the BLM movement might have been a catalyst for some of these changes.
Right.
But for instance, Bozoma St. John, she started coming up the ranks because she was the CMO at Apple. Then she went to Uber,
Uber,
right,
then Endeavor, right?
Right. And then now she's gonna lead a Netflix. And she has a very open brand. I mean,
100%.
she lives the LA lifestyle. She's best friends with P. Diddy. But she talks a lot about her personal life. She talks a lot about her work. And you feel like I read every one of her posts, and they're quite long.
Right.
And I feel like that, yes, she has a huge influencer brand behind her. But what it does show is that if you want to, if you do want to be open on social media, and you want to create a brand that's very much connected to who your personality is, that's a good thing. And that if a company doesn't appreciate that, they're probably not going to be a fit.
That's a good sign. It's a good sign that you're not probably going to a place that you feel would be able to support you, where you can thrive. I 100% agree with that. I mean, even with the BLM with Bozoma, she was really vocal about how she thought about that. She talked about it on podcasts, talked about it on TV, she talked about it in interviews.
Yes.
And then for her to get a new job, just a couple weeks later, and I could imagine that they know that she's going to be like a firehouse and a powerhouse working there. Mm-hmm. It's just a testament of like, if you like, I always say like, it's not, you shouldn't have to not be yourself to get something that you want. In fact, you should be more of yourself so you find the right opportunities that match who you are. And so I think that's the key here. Like, if you want to be in a place where you feel like you can be who you really are, be who you really are, so that you can find the right people, and the right people can deny you because they weren't the right people anyway.
It's true. And very true on visibility. I struggle with that because Heidi made a very good point. LinkedIn does feel like a full-time job. Mm-hmm. Everything from making sure it's grammatically correct, that, it's not, you're not just reposting something, and then if you have a point of view, that it's like politically correct. So you're not saying something that, let's say, your team or your boss would find like, oh, that's strange. That being said, I have found sometimes it just takes just putting something out there. So taking a quote out of an article that you like and just putting a quote. Other times it's like, wow, this is a really great initiative because of X, Y, and Z. I don't think I'll ever be able to keep up with LinkedIn and how people put these long posts there. I find it extremely time consuming. But I have found, even with this webinar, or with recruiting, like our page we've gone from 50 something followers to 300. And that is predominantly because we are putting the brand out there. So it's the same thing with your career and your personal brand. Sometimes it's just taking the step forward and putting yourself out there, and you would be surprised to the people that are noticing you and DMing you and saying, oh, wow, I didn't know you did that. Or you were qualified in this, or can we have a chat about X or Y or Z?
Yeah. So, and on a practical note to that, Heidi, it's good to know that posts on LinkedIn last like a week. So like, if you post something on LinkedIn, like, I still get posts. I don't post often. I try to post maybe once a week, maybe every 2 weeks. But I still get people seeing my posts after a week or so of me posting them because they were interested in it. As well as, it doesn't take that much for it to be trending as well. Like, you can get like 10 likes and like, this post is trending, So, and that also kind of keeps it going. So I think that if you have maybe something that's practical and realistic for you to post maybe twice a month, I think that will still gain the traction that you're looking for and start increasing your visibility little by little.
Thank you. Super helpful.
Yeah, I'm glad.
All right. Well, when I used to work at a video company, say you get time back. So you can have 7 minutes back, or unless there are any other questions. And like I said, we'll follow this up with breaking this video apart. Feel free to share it with your networks, and sign up for the other episodes if they suit some of the things you're working on in your personal brand as well as your career health. All right. I don't know.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you for
Thank
taking the time.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.